Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order. This meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. There's no additions or deletions to the agenda that I'm aware of. So we have a recommendation there, approval of the agenda for May 13th, 2026, special council meeting as presented. Is someone prepared to move that? Moved by Councillor Strong, second by Councillor Babineau. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. So now we're going to move right into the presentations. So 5.1, the draft electric utility capital budget.
Thank you, Chair. We do have our consultant on here. Pardon me, Darren, I can't remember your name, so I can't see it right now.
Yeah, Darren Lamont.
Thank you.
Can you see my, can you guys see my screen? You folks see my screen?
Yes, we can.
The big screen with everything on it? Okay, perfect.
Yep. Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, so here to present the draft Lunenburg electric utility capital budget. First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor and Council for inviting me to speak on the capital budget. And second item would be I'd like to congratulate Lunenburg on becoming a member of the MEUA. I know those folks pretty well, all the local utilities, and I think they got a good support group there that can help the town move forward. You know, I think some of the areas that you guys may have been discussing, you know, potentially, you know, AMI metering, asset management, cybersecurity, and a future roadmap for, you know, potential down the road. As I said, we've done work for, I think, the majority of those MEUAs. So with that, I just want to just give that little shout out and congratulations. With that, I'm going to move on. Here's the contents. It's going to do an overview, talk about year 1, year 2, 3, 4, and 5, and a summary at the end. And please jump in anytime anyone has a question. Feel free to ask questions freely throughout the presentation, and you know, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. So we were involved, requested by Lunenburg, you know, provide a 5-year capital plan spanning 26 to 2031. The plan looked at all aspects of the system. You know, we looked at previous documentation from other consultants and other firms over the years, and we used sound judgment and previous experience to come up with a budget. The overall 5-year budget is substantial. It's 20.1 million. And you know, this allows for critical upgrades on the distribution feeders, construction of a new substation on Green Street, and upgrading the existing Star Street sub to allow it to provide a backup to the Green Street sub. And this increases reliability during times if there ever is such an outage on the new sub. The existing Star Street sub could perform as a backup. The plan at the end of that time is to, you know, clean up that yard and clean it up, some of the infrastructure, and bring it up to standard. We'll get into that as we move forward. As I said, we talked about reliability. I know that's been a concern for the town. Also, increased capacity for new customers to allow them to connect to the grid. Renewables is becoming a huge impact in all utilities across the country, and especially announcements within Nova Scotia. So it's going to allow customers to connect to your grid, and also allow the addition of electric vehicle chargers within the town. I think that's a very good path forward, and also it allows, you know, the growth to occur. As you can see, the chart, I did a quick little bar chart, shows the capital expenditure proposed over a 5-year plan. They are substantial numbers, as you can see, over the years. And, you know, you got 4.3 million year 1, 26, 27. Year 2 is 4.8 million. 28, 29 is 4.4. Year 4, 3.8. And year 5 is 3.4. They're significant spends. But at the end of this presentation, I hope you get a better understanding on where the funds are being allocated and why these expenditures are required within the town. This pie chart shows the expenditure by category. As you can see, can you guys see my cursor moving?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the existing substation is around 9% over the 5-year plan. The new substation, 31%. Just routine work is like 15%, and the feeder upgrades are 45%. So these two are your big numbers in over the 5-year plan. And over time, once these projects and updates are done, these large numbers disappear and you go back to your regular routine work and small little projects that come up. So over the five after the 5-year plan. I'll jump right in to the first year, which is 26, 27. We budgeted 4.3 million, and the bulk of it's for the feeder upgrades on Green Street, Knock Lane, and Blue Rocks. Knock Lane and Blue Rocks have been some of the areas that over the winter there's been a few cold load pickups, areas of concern during reliability. Those projects allow us to go in, allow the crews will go in and upgrade the feeders, move some load around to help alleviate the overload on those feeders and allow quicker access to restore power if there is such an outage. The 78W feeder upgrade is a feeder that will tie into this Green Street feeder on a temporary basis until the new Green Street substation's done. This will allow the load on Green all the way from Green Street right down into town to McDonald Street to be picked up on the new 12 kV circuit that's being fed from NS Power sub. We've been collaborating with Nova Scotia Power, and they have been on board with this project, and are willing. And we're working with them to determine when their work's going to be done. We indicated that it has to be done by the end of November, and they're supportive of that so far to date. Here's the breakdown of the 2026-27 budget. May look a little different in the presentation that in the report that you would have seen as kind of made it kind of a little bit more legible for the PowerPoint. As you can see, the routine distribution is 590,000. The new feeder work amounts to 2.97. This is the Green Street double circuit that I talked about. The distribution transformer upgrade, that's the one to help upgrade the existing transformers in town, get rid of the underslung transformers, and convert to the 12 kV circuits. And any of these expenditures are not wasted funds. They contribute to the overall upgrading of all the feeders within the town of Lunenburg. That was one of the main focuses that we worked on to determine that. So there's no money that we have to throw new money at it for versus old money. All the funds are going to be contributing to the growth and the upgrading of the existing facilities within the town. And a lot of this work, you'll see the new substation. There's a design that has to be done. Like we got 200,000 there in case we have to purchase land. If land doesn't have to be purchased, there's no expenditure required. But we put it in there based on previous cases that we have done in other jurisdictions, and that's where you'll see all the funding. That's what this all tallies up to allow all the work to build a new substation within the town. There's yard prep, some site drainage, the grounding for the new subs, some geotech work. You have to do some boreholes to make sure some foundation work can be supported on the soil that's there. Some testing of the soil, and the EIA. We allotted about $100,000 in case there's an environmental impact assessment that's required for the new sub. If this is not required according to the town bylaws and in that area, that money doesn't have to be spent at that point in time. studies. This is called the new Nova Scotia Independent System Operator. That's a new group that was spun off from Nova Scotia Power, who manage the transmission system. So when a new sub gets connected to the grid, there's a study that's required by them to determine if and when this new sub can be connected to the grid. And we allotted $50,000 for that study that's performed by, it's made payments to the Nova Scotia Independent System Operator. We're in consideration, we don't think that's going to be that high, but that's where it's been at some other jurisdictions and other provinces at some point. So that's why we allowed the $50,000 in that place. And the new substation, while we're doing all this yard prep, we'll install some trenching and conduit work so we don't have to go dig that back up again. And that totals $870,000 for this coming year. As I said, I talked all about this, newly formed Nova Scotia ISO, proposed new substation, and removal of any existing PCB transformers. That's one of the environmental things that we are working on currently, and they have to be all removed by December of 2026. And we have $600,000 allotted for that. And that money is not wasted also. That money allows new transformers and upgrades to the existing poles that are being worked on and where transformers are being relocated and upgraded. Any questions on year one before we jump into year two from anyone?
Deputy Mayor?
I am the asker of questions.
Got nothing wrong with that. It's all good.
All right. So, and you have to please bear with me because this I'm trying to understand the technical just as much as I need to. I will never understand it fully, but just so I can get a grip on what needs to be done. Where is it that we're envisioning this substation will be? I keep hearing it called Green Street. I heard talk off Highway 3. I'm just not quite sure if there's a site located, and if so, would we not know if the land needs to be procured or not?
So you are correct. I believe it's off the Highway 3 where there's some signage right there as you come into the town. There's a parcel of land right there that butts up to federal property. I believe there's a federal building up on the hill that I think that the town once sold that land to the government, I believe.
Maybe Darren, I can jump in.
Go ahead. Yep.
That's not
It's
Highway
that little
3 then.
wedge, where those like little tourism kiosks are.
Right.
And where the provincial building, like up to that land there. We're just not sure if that can be the location. And so that's why the allowance for potential purchase, because there might need to be on either side of that road, or even there may have to be conversations with the province if there is some component of that lower part of that land, if they're not using it, and that they would be allowed for that.
Okay, is that all of province land now, that V, or?
That little V, some of that's ours.
Yeah, I thought, okay, yeah, so it's, okay, so that's not Highway 3, so that's, that is off Green Street, so good, okay, there just seems to be, a bit of a disconnect in how it's referenced, I think, sometimes, and so I was getting confused.
So to add to that too, if that site's not available, we looked at a site right across the street from that. I think it's owned. The Nova Scotia Power transmission line comes through. I believe there's 4 or 5 properties at that intersection right there. So either one of those properties would work. We're hoping the one with the wedge and the provincial will work out if we can, get a portion of that property. The wedge property is not large enough to sustain the substation at this point. So, and we haven't made any really headway pull on that yet, as we are waiting for the Nova Scotia system operator to give the green light to connect to the transmission line. Then that's when the next steps, and we're hoping this will happen within the next weeks, I should say weeks, a month or so. It takes time for them to make their decision.
Oh, and just if I may, your worship, before. I just wanted to note that when Darren was going through his presentation, I noted that there was a bit of a typo in that land item that Darren noted 200,000, but in the physical budget document, it's 100. So I just wanted to note
Yeah.
that there was just a typo in the presentation. Apologies. It's 100,000. That's what's in the budget document.
Any other question so far? Go ahead.
If you could indulge me again and the all of the acronyms I get confused about. So
Okay.
the IESO and the EIA.
Okay.
If you
Sorry.
could.
Yep. The EIA is a short for environmental impact assessment. Sometimes that's required when a new building and structure or structures required on new lands for a substation in certain jurisdictions. They require an assessment, environmental assessment to happen to look at, is there any environmental impacts by building a substation or structure on that piece of land that could affect if there's any water courses, any species at risk. Sometimes that's required by the Department of Environment. I suspect in this area it may not be. That's why it's in there as a placeholder in case that is required. Does that kind of clear that one up for you?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
And this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the new branch of, it's called the Nova Scotia Independent Electric System Operator. I think they call it the IESO. It's a Nova Scotia Independent System Operator, and that's a branch of Nova Scotia Power that was spun off, who just recently, within the last 6 months, who are responsible for any client accessing the transmission line, whether it's town of Lunenburg, whether it's a private wind developer, they apply to connect to the transmission system. Then they in turn go look at, okay, what's the load? What is the existing load on that transmission system? Can the existing facilities handle the increased load that's going to be added to the system? And in our case, we suspect our impact is negligible because we're going to be transferring load from the Star Street sub to this new sub, which is on the same transmission line. That's been in the basis of our report. So far, discussions we've been having with the system operator, and there's just one final documentation that we're putting together ourselves to submit to them.
Your worship, if I was just going to note, if it would provide additional clarity for council for referencing for the future on the approved document, we could have a legend for some of those abbreviations at the bottom.
That'd be great because there's a lot.
Oh yeah, I was just going to echo that too. It's very helpful. I know he said it, in the presentation, but it kind of, doesn't stay with us, that those of us who aren't familiar with them. So yeah, I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate that. That's a good feedback for sure. Right.
Any other questions, comments? I guess I just have one question. Just
sure.
So both substations are going to be fed off the same transmission line, I understand from what you just said. I guess it would cost a lot more money, but would it not make sense if the old substation remains on the transmission line coming into town that it's already on? Is there another transmission line that comes in through the Bridgewater Highway way by any chance? I've no idea. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, through your worship, we've asked that question. We'd rather have the new substation on a new transmission line. There's none in that area, and we spoke with Nova Scotia Power, and there's no plans in their next 10 years to put a new transmission line in that area. There's no plans to date to do that. And one of the plans that we'll get into it later is the Star Street sub will, once the Green Street's up, it'll be a backup, and it could be utilized to just maybe pick up Blue Rocks and First Peninsula type of thing areas, and keep the other one picking up the other 3 feeders, Bridgewater Road and the other areas. So at times you can switch between them. So if something happens at If there's an accident downtown, they can switch the load from one station to another, and then it limits your outage time, and that's called increasing reliability. And there'll be some costs associated, as you can see, that are in the budget of keeping that existing sub up, but there's the transformers that are in that yard. One transformer's already has the capability to be converted to 12 kV. So
Okay, thank you. It makes sense. I just thought I'd
yeah,
ask.
no, we asked that same question.
Because if
Thought
the
it was
power coming into that transmission line goes, it doesn't matter how many substations we have, if we
exactly.
don't have the juice to operate it.
Exactly.
Any, Deputy Mayor?
Go ahead. Just gonna add to that comment that you had, Your Worship, about it's not so much reliability about the transmission feed in, it's about the reliability within the feeders to provide that flexibility within the town.
Correct.
Assuming that we haven't lost transmission issue. Yes.
I have because I find it really helpful, the image of our different circuits that we have on our website up on my iPad, just for reference. Yes,
here.
the one you
Yep.
showed earlier. Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. And I noticed in the commentary, you mentioned Knock Lane.
Yeah.
And I guess, and in that image, it's not shown as part of the system at all. It's not in orange like the rest of the Bridgewater circuit. It's actually in black on my picture.
It
Yeah,
comes up
that
this
little
way.
one.
Yep, it comes up this way.
Yeah.
So right now, this feeder comes up and it stops right here at a dwelling. So the plan is to bring this feeder up here and tie into this area. This was an area of concern during the winter. So that's going to be the Knock Lane upgrade in this way, right up through here. It'll pick up some of this load from this feeder. And in the meantime, this is the Green Street. We're going to be upgrading all the way down here to McDonald because we already did some this year. This is going to be upgraded all here. This will be converted to 12 kV, and it'll be picked up from Nova Scotia Power feeder right here. Going to come down, pick up. And the land we were talking about is right in this area. And there's another potential area over here or back here to put those. We're looking at those potentially 3 areas for the substation in those 3 areas. I should have went back to that map. Glad you pointed that out. So that's the Knock Lane to pick up some of this load back on this Bridgewater feeder. This Bridgewater feeder has a little bit of a capability to offset some of the peak load on this feeder.
George?
Well, I guess you noted about the color change. The map isn't perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on the website. I just wanted to note that, but it does come from the Bridgewater Road feeder right now.
Yep.
Okay. And I guess just what we heard about constantly wasn't Knock Lane, it was Wolf.
But
so it's all part of the same.
All part of that. Yeah. It's part of that whole group.
Yeah. Just wanted to clarify that we're hitting the high points.
Yep. That's exactly the intent. And also, once we do that Green Street, our plan is to, part of that upgrade, again on Green Street, is to pick up this, convert it to 12. So you're picking up some of this load too on the new feeder also.
So basically all of the Centennial Avenue area for the most part, like especially the new builds, will be somewhat upgraded after this upgrade.
Yeah, that's our plan because there was talk about some future developments in here.
Yes.
And it would make sense to pick them up off the new feeder here, not off the other feeder, if long as access is available, from Green Street or off one of these streets in here. Yes.
Yeah, because any of us that live here, that most future growth, if any, will be happening probably in that area. So it's good to get that upgraded, as soon as we can and be able to, handle any of that future growth if it comes our way. Any other comments or questions for year 1? If not, we can move to year 2. Okay, we can go on to year 2.
Yep. Okay. Year 2. This bulk of this year ends up being, again, the new substation. So as you can see, there's $750,000 for a new power transformer. They're roughly around, $2.5 million to purchase. When you go for a tender, they want a substantial down payment. We've done one just recently for one of your utilities in your MEU, Summerside. We had a transformer that's being delivered for them already, and all the down payments or some down payments that are required up front. So that's a significant investment, and it's part of the requirements to allow the upgrades to occur within the town. This 1.095 million procurement work for high voltage switches. I know we're getting into the technical jingle here, but it's the equipment required to support the upgrade of the upgrade and the installation of the new substation to allow it to operate at its required voltage and for new equipment to be purchased. And part of this here too is the allocation for $300,000 for engineering support to complete the design package. They're called issued for construction drawings, and they go out to the drawings get sent out to qualified construction folks who can come in, excavate the line, grounds, build the framework around what the substation requires, erect steel, pour foundations that'll support the power transformer and other equipment, and also for some, do the drainage and everything else. We have to have plans have to be in place and drawings so that the vendors can bid on that and contractors can bid on what's required. So that'll be a process that'll be issued through the town. There's also identified 1.5 million to upgrade the old town circuit, 81321 to 15 kV, which again would, once that's done, it'll be flipped over to the new substation once the substation's online in 2030. And you may think, oh, geez, we're doing this. Why are we doing this so early? Well, if you look at every year, there's 5 feeders in the town, so every feeder has to be upgraded. So as we move through the upgrades, we build each feeder up to 15 kV standards. And at that time, once the new substation comes online, there'll be an outage, and we just go turn a dial on the transformers all on each pole, and they're already converted. All the infrastructure is all in place to maintain and operate at 12 kV. That's how that procedure works. And of
Darren?
course, yeah.
Darren, can you just jump to the map to show them that feeder circuit, please?
Yep. Sure. That's this circuit in here, which eventually ties into the Blue Rocks feeder. So, and we chose feeders. There's no real, I'll say, we could have picked any feeder along here, but this one here is going to be upgraded as we do the Green Street anyway. And we picked Old Town, then we pick First Peninsula, Bridgewater Road, Newtown, and Blue Rocks area. So that's where that feeder is in here, this area. And it gets rid of the old infrastructure. There's a lot of old poles, the transformers. We have some transformers that are not up to standard in the equipment, so it's gonna you'll see a drastic difference. I know it's hard to visualize today on electrical grid. It's not like you can't see everything flowing, but you'll see the new poles, the new hardware, and the new equipment mounted on the poles. And all these upgrades just allow customers to upgrade services, add EV chargers at some point in the future, and allows there's no concern. It makes it, to me, it opens a town for business on the Lunenburg electric utility side. There's no, we got to go do analysis to see if that feeder can handle that new load. Well, as we go into the report later, you would have seen some graphs that I showed you on some of the feeders. I'll go over those a little later, and I'll show you what the difference looks like between now and later. We've also allocated 200,000 for potential implementation of smart meters. I know you've heard a lot about that around all utilities in Atlantic Canada, like Nova Scotia is in the middle of it, in the middle of an implementation. New Brunswick Power is, I believe St. John Energy is already starting to do an implementation of smart meters in their facility. They had an older system, but they're doing an upgrade for a new system. So. As we can see in the budget, we highlighted this is the routine stuff. This is for meters, overhead conductors, poles and fixtures, services, transformers, street lighting, and a total 770. Then we go on to some work. There's been some reports from Nova Scotia Power. There's some potential minor, non-standard issues that we got to look at that's in the existing yard. We got to keep the grass away and the grounding and the crushed rock. We got to reestablish that to make sure it's safe for everyone in that area. The ground grid repairs, make sure that's all satisfactory, and any existing fence issues to maintain any clearances and any standards to keep folks out of the substation yard. The new substation, as you can see, this is a large expenditure in that year's 2.245 million. As we said, we take the engineering design, finish that off 30%, then we do the final design package to have the drawings ready for submission out for contractors. Down payment on the transformer. What normally happens, a specification goes out for tender. The bids come back and they get analyzed, and the successful vendor gets awarded the building of the transformer. These transformers could take up to 2 years to manufacture and be delivered to site. That's why we plan early to get that procured and get things moving. The high voltage switches in the substation yard. A new switcher in the yard that allows the line to be disconnected on the transmission side. Foundation structures that support the power transformer and any other equipment in the yard. They got to be dug down. A new fence. A fence you think that's that's 100,000 by the time you get all the fencing and the barbed wire and the grounding and all the posts in. That's a substantial bill with the gates and access. Some studies. These get into the studies now. We do a protection, which this is a study that's required to when the equipment's supposed to trip and open up in case of a fault on the feeder. This voltage profile is a study to determine the voltage at the end of the line. Are customers actually going to see the proper voltage at their residence? That's a study that's required. Some trenching and conduit work, some ground grids, a ground grid in place in a substation. You got to establish a ground grid so during a condition of fault that someone's in the yard, they don't get electrocuted. So you got to establish a grid within that yard that takes everything down to zero potential. Oil containment. This is kind of a new item. Utilities have been doing this in case there's ever a leak in this transformer. They established what's called an oil containment system, and some cases it's a boom, it's like a fabric. It doesn't allow oil to permeate through, but water can flow through. If there's ever a leak, the oil turns into a gel and it's contained within a containment center, so it helps protect the environment. A lot of utilities are going that way, and Nova Scotia Power is actually proceeding that way. St. John Energy has gone that way also. So we got some existing yard improvements as we talked about in the existing sub, and again we have the feeder upgrade. So I'm probably going to repeat myself over here. Oh, that's year 3. So any questions on year 2 before we jump into year 3?
Does anyone have any questions on year 2? Deputy Mayor?
Just a general question with regard to the estimates in this. I know it's hard to estimate, and as time goes on, the prices probably increase. And so
Yeah.
my assumption is that these are quite generous estimates. Would that be fair?
On
to say?
yeah, on some we put a little contingency in there just in case for any inflation. And Deputy Mayor, we're hoping that, some of these studies may not alleviate to that amount of money. Yes, that's what they're saying. Where we put a little contingency there. We know the power transformer is probably pretty close to the price. We know what these numbers are. I went through and we created a document to show the overall cost of what the new substation is, and we feel we're within you know, plus or minus 10%, I think, with the overall, considering other jurisdictions and what has happened around certain areas.
Any other questions? Okay, you can go to year 3 now.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Uh, Year 3, 28, 29, we got a $4.47 million budget. Again, 2.1 million. You'll see the funds include power transformer, there's a large portion of that. We have a $1.5 million feeder for Blue Rocks upgrade, and this allows this to be coming into the new substation when it's online in 2030. I can jump back to show you, like you guys are probably familiar with the Blue Rocks area where that is out this way, upgrading that feeder to the new standard also. I didn't the map's kind of cut off because it would look pretty small trying to fit that in there, but that's where that area is out that way. So with that, I'm going to keep going on year 3. And we allowed some funding to clean up the existing yard. And we allowed, again, some money for smart meters to be allowed in the area. So going through the budget, we allowed 670,000 for routine engineering. Routine work in the city includes meters, overhead conductors, poles and fixtures, street lighting, and transformers. And there's one of your major down payments on your transformer. It's $1 million in 28, 29. So that'll get the transformer, the major portion of the payments on that power transformer. And here we got some equipment in the substation, 200,000. 250 for the 15 kV bus work, 250 for the 69 kV. Then we have some relay protection and a control building. So all these are pieces and parts for a new substation that's required to allow that substation to be built on the Green Street property. And again, we talked about the existing substation improvements. Some of the bus work, it's low in that area, so to bring that up so it gets a better ground clearance, we allotted $100,000 to clean it up. Nova Scotia Power has identified some potential items there to be looked at when they do their inspections. And of course, we did a feeder upgrade of 1.5 million with that. I know I'm going through it pretty quick, but I just want you guys to feel comfortable and ask questions before we go to year 4. Any questions on any of the items we talked about here on year 3?
Does anyone have any questions? Deputy Mayor?
Just a comment that I don't know if we'll ever be comfortable talking about millions of dollars. But just speaking personally on this, it can't happen soon enough. So yeah, we'll have to swallow hard and soldier on.
And it takes time, right? It takes time to plan and go ahead, to make all these things happen and dot the I's and cross the T's. So that's why one of the things I'm hoping that you guys Mayor and Council are seeing this, that we're putting a plan in place that, the light's at the end of the tunnel. It's just going to take some time to get there, and it takes a huge amount of capital expenditure to get there. And I'm confident once you'll see, once this is done, completed, the budget will drop back to I'll call it reasonable value. You know, a number that's much more palatable, I guess we'll call it that. You want to call it that, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that the amount of the budget is, it's very high for our budget. Terry, it's probably the biggest project that we've ever taken on at one time because of cost nowadays. But I think that what it's done is if we approve this budget, it's created a plan and a vision for the future that, quite frankly, when the light comes on at the end of the tunnel, there might be a different looking table up here sitting, but we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for the future of the community. So whoever happens to be here in 2031 or 32, we can at least leave knowing that we've left the community in much safer and better hands than we came in to. So I think it's whatever we decide here tonight is definitely for the future. And unfortunately, some of us might not be sitting around this table when the light finally comes on, but at least we can take pride in the fact that we've made a decision to go the right direction to at least get to the end of that tunnel. So again, it can't come soon enough, but these things take time, and this is one process, one step in the process that we have to get by, and then hopefully maybe some other levels of government can hear us speaking and maybe come to the table as well, because obviously the sooner we can get the funds, the sooner we can complete the project as well. It takes time to order the parts and everything else. We all know that. But if we had $20 million, for example, in the bank right now, we could certainly start ordering things tomorrow if we had to. So again, I think that even though some of us or most of us probably don't understand some of the numbers that are on the left and the KVs and this and
Yeah.
that, we understand the budgeted amount. And again, it's an overwhelming amount for a town this size. But again, it's something that we have to do. So I think you're explaining things very clearly, and you're explaining it in a way that most of us, I think, will be able to understand at least what we need to understand leaving here tonight. So I'd want to thank you for that, Darren. So if
Yeah,
there's
no,
no other comments, we can move to year 4.
yeah, and I
So
encourage I encourage questions, but go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to suggest, Your Worship, Darren can certainly take you through years 4 and 5, but as he's noted before, they're building on those years 1, 2, and 3. You can see how that's coming, right? Like it's just more work on the substation and then the feeder upgrades and that. Darren has got some graphs towards the end that sort of show you what this all looks like when we come to fruition. And if it pleases council, he could flip to those rather than moving through those other years. But if you wanted to take year by year, we can continue on that way.
I'm fine with going to the charts because basically year 4 and 5 are more of year 2 and 3,
Yes.
only completing the project, right? It's a lot of the same things over and over.
That's why I suggested.
Yeah,
Quite frankly, we all know the world we live in. Years 4 and 5 could also possibly be altered a bit here and there in year 3, for example, because we've moved some things, as you know, from the budget we passed basically 8 months ago. We've moved some things around because of need and emergencies. We've discovered that certain areas are in greater need than others, so we've moved some things around. So that might happen again. Nobody knows what the future is going to bring. So no, if you want to move to the graphs and the things that really the ultimate thing that I think citizens want to know is, when this is done finally, what does it mean? Like, does it double our power capacity, triple it? Does it, so numbers like that is what I think is really important.
Yeah, for sure. And the summary, the summary revolves right around that. The whole 5-year project revolves new Green Street substation, conversion of the existing 5 feeders within the town. And part of that is, we're going to jump right into the graphs here. The results of the feeder conversion, new substation. As you can see, when I jump to the graphs, I'll just jump right over right now. Here's the Bridgewater Road feeder currently. So this is how it trends over the past, 4 years during times. And you can see this number here, this line here is, they call it a base load line that Nova Scotia Power uses for their planning. And this is kind of an emergency loading. anything over here, anything in this range, you want to really do something about it. Well, currently in Lunenburg, there's very little room to move any of this existing load to other feeders. You can't do it. I think there's times during the year where you've experienced outages, and they would have been long because the load spiked up and you had to wait till it comes down to pick up more customers. So this feeder is currently operating at I'll call it, it's a lower voltage, 4.16. It's not a standard voltage in today's day. It's not. So what happens when we convert that to 12, if you can watch as I jump over, you can see there's the baseline and there's the emergency. So now by having that conversion to 12 kV, you gained almost 3 times the capacity on that feeder. So you have room. This is your room to grow, room to add new customers. Customers want to convert to electric heat, want to add stuff in. Now you got less issues on the feeders. The equipment's not overloaded anymore. Up here, the previous graph, it was all the equipment was overloaded. So as you can see, there's a great major impact on the grid at that point in time. There's huge savings and huge benefits on if you ever heard of losses, your losses decrease because now you're at a higher voltage and there's less heat loss in the conductor. And I'm just going to go through them all, and we can have a good chat after. This would be the Newtown circuit. You know, we did a little switching over here during the year, but you can see this one is approaching up here. It gets in, they're all within that range, and there's not much room to add more load, like another apartment complex. The shipyard wants to expand. By having those feeders converted, there's the room. They can add on. Your town's open for business on the electrical side. You can add more EV chargers on the system. You can add new clients coming in, expansion at Abco, whatever, they can expand. There's room for expansion. That's what at the end of the day. And it's more for the crews working on this. This is more of a standard voltage to work on. All the hazards, there's less hazards on the existing poles because your older infrastructure had hazards where the equipment was close to the primary wire. Here we separated that and brought the equipment to Nova Scotia Power standards, which allows the linemen and the personnel to work safely on the infrastructure also. This is the First Peninsula feeder. As you can see, we did a little bit of switching, added some load. This load was First Peninsula had some room for expansion. Bringing that down, it comes down. You got all kinds of room in the First Peninsula for expansion and load growth in that area. So, and at times, as you heard me say earlier, by having the Star Street sub, a couple, maybe 2 feeders on that, and some feeders 3 on the other sub, you can switch. There's at times of an outage, you have room for this feeder maybe can pick up Old Town because they'll all be at the same voltage. You can have some tie points where they can flip back and forth. And if you get it up to here in the winter for an emergency situation, because there's an accident downtown that took out a section of line where you can transfer that to the other feeder, and it can still operate up in these ranges safely. Old Town, as you can see, this is an oddball voltage. It's a non-standard voltage. It's very hard to get equipment. It's specialty equipment to order. But as you can see, the load variation, all the feeders up here and the base loads up here. By adding the new conversion, room for growth all down in here. This is like you got twice the capacity now compared to that old circuit 4. There's room.
And Darren, maybe just because that is one of the ones that has that extremely odd voltage that council's been concerned about, replacement of equipment, this will become standard equipment that you could borrow from other utility, if you were in a bind or something like that. Right now, we don't have that flexibility.
Yeah, and all the like the existing MEUs don't have this voltage on their system. So if you needed a transformer, you couldn't go talk to Edmonton Energy or Mahone Bay and say, oh, can we borrow a transformer and we'll repay you later? They don't have any. But when it's converted here, an emergency situation, God forbid, yeah, they have them. That's a standard voltage used in all other communities. All the MEUs standardize on this voltage in their communities.
And through you, Chair, just within that, that has been a discussion within the MME is about how do we have inventories across all 9 utilities and what can be shared when and if necessary. And getting us to this level will put us on the same level as our partner organizations.
And again, there's Blue Rocks, the older non-standard voltage. Here's the trend over the past few years. And by post-conversion, you see we have more room for expansion. So at the end of that, I know I'm pretty much done my presentation, but as you can see, I hope some of these graphs showed why we're doing these conversions, why we're adding Green Street sub, what the impact is for the town, and makes the town, you know, I call it open for business, but then now you can have more development without any, I'll call it electrical issues really that could come down. Where are we going to put them? What feeder? How are we going to do it? Right now there's room. You'll have room to do this. So that's the vision at the end of it. This is what we're trying to obtain at the end of the 5-year plan as that new substation gets constructed and built on Green Street. So with that, I'm going to open the floor up for any Q&A, any questions anyone wants to ask. I'm open, and anytime if you're unsure about something, if you leave tonight and have a question, route that through Lisa or Paul, and I'll gladly answer anything we can to help support and make you feel confident on our path forward that we want to bring to town.
So basically, after looking at the graphs, the conclusion is that it's going to make our system safer, much more reliable, going to give us approximately 3 times the power we currently have, and just make the system much more efficient and effective, and quite frankly, make Lunenburg a more attractive place to either come build or to do business. Because right now, even if you want to build a shed and hook power up to it, you have to get a scope done because no one's sure if we're going to have enough juice to give you to put electricity in that shed, for example. So this just makes us, way more attractive for businesses looking to expand or people to look to build housing development. So again, we might not be here to see the complete finish, but I think that we're heading in the right direction, and it's actually an exciting time, I think, here in Lunenburg, and it's an exciting time for our utility. So, I can't wait to get started, quite frankly, and I really appreciate the work, Darren, that you guys have put into this, because this is the second or third time we've heard presentations, and especially when you get to the graphs and that, it makes it so that we can all understand really what the overall benefit is much easier than when it's written down and the way it was explained. So again, thank you very much. Does anybody around the table have any questions for Darren or Lisa? Councillor Fullerton.
Not questions, just comments. Thank you very much for this. I spent a fair amount of time on it last night, and I have to say that by the time I got to the graphs, I was losing it. So I didn't really, I'm happy for the explanation of the graphs, because I just wasn't following those by the time I got there. But, my takeaways for this is that, we're finally tackling this massive project. And we're doing it in a proactive way, or we're trying to be proactive. Remains to be seen as we go, if we have to change direction because something blows up. But that's the intention, at least, is to go through a planned phased upgrade in a timely manner, in a proactive manner. We add capacity as we go. We've got new technology, industry standard equipment. This to me sounds like it would be very exciting to, oh, sorry, that's me. There. No, it's very exciting to be able to communicate this to people when they ask, well, how, it's a big number, it's a frightening number, but I mean, if we can portray it to our citizens in a way that they see that it makes sense and that as we go, it gets better as we go, then as far as I'm concerned, there's no looking back. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Strong?
I actually love the charts. I'm a very chart-based person, and I think we need those on the website so that not just council can explain it to the public, so that public can actually understand it themselves. Really easy to understand and comprehend, and shocking that we're at this point, to be honest with you. And I'm excited that it's going to move forward, and I hope council is going to be here to see it through. Bye.
Anybody else have any comments? Councillor Babineau?
Thank you. Yeah, no questions, just also comments. Throughout this whole process, since really we've joined council, like since I've joined council, we've had tons of not tons, we've had many presentations, meetings, conversations with service providers, the MMEUA, and I have been consistently so impressed with the information that we are being given from, Darren, from SEMA, from our own finance staff, and Tyson even, like, so impressed. It's made somebody who has I'm not an electrical engineer, just in case anyone was wondering, able to understand this, to explain it to residents when they ask, which is very, very important. And yeah, just thank you very much to all of you.
Anybody else have anything? Deputy Mayor?
I hate to follow all of that wonderful praise because it's so well deserved, but I just had a couple other little nagging questions, just about the phasing, and again, it's just for peace of mind, that it's very ambitious. It's 5 years, and hopefully at the end of the 5 years, if all goes as laid out, we will have this very robust, wonderful electric grid at our disposal for everyone. So I'm assuming, but I guess I'm just looking for confirmation that it's the plan is developed in pieces that are doable. So each year we've picked, you folks, technical people, have decided what is doable within a fiscal year and prioritized accordingly. And so it's what we're proving can get done. I guess I'm just.
And from through you, your worship, Chair, that's how we tried to plan that out, because there's certain things that can't happen until something else is done. So as we move through in stages, that's kind of the plan. Like, we could pick one feeder over the other to do 1 year ahead of time. We just, went through, okay, we figured the Blue Rocks, one of those areas, try to get rid of the 5 kV stuff first, move along. And it has to progress in stages. And as you're aware, Nova Scotia Power is currently the service provider, and we work with Nova Scotia Power. But we also have access to other crews that are authorized to work on Nova Scotia Power system. There's CAUS and K-Line, who are authorized providers that can work on the system. So we're engaging those too. So because Nova Scotia Power's got their own projects that they're trying to get done too. So that's why we've been proactive, reaching out, talking to service providers. They're on board. Nova Scotia Power is on board. What we're trying to accomplish here, we've talked to them at high level on some of these issues, and the new substation, they're fully supportive of this, what we're trying to accomplish. So we've had meetings with the local Nova Scotia Power folks and the people in the area, and they're supportive. The area where we're going to try to tie to, they're happy with that area. They're working with the town on scoping and getting work done too. So they're supportive of what we're trying to accomplish.
And maybe I can just add to Darren's comments, certainly like when we were, we're working closely together to try to develop this plan. It balanced, the work that needs to be done, but over these 5 years, it is ambitious and it will require like not letting the gas off, keeping that moving forward. And that's where Darren can keep that momentum going on the projects. I guess I just wanted to add that note.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's what I'm thinking. We can't drop the ball. We have to make sure that, follow up and make sure we're not, taking our foot off the gas, to borrow your term, because I think that's so incredibly important, because we need to get to that end game as quickly as possible, and financing that is going to be the biggest challenge. Hopefully, like the work can get done. And just one other little tiny nagging question on the graphs, which are lovely and illustrative and very helpful, but the top lines are always at 400 amps. That doesn't change from the pre and the post in the graph. And
No, that's generally where you set your planning criteria. So as it approaches, you always have a set limit. Nova Scotia Power, I think, uses 350. So if they get over 350, oh, we got a plan to do something. How do we alleviate any load growth? And the 400, some utilities go a little higher depending on the main feeder conductor. It's all based on the conductor size, how far you can overload that feeder. That's why they just maintain a flat level on where they go. That's just a base. Anything over there, if you're a planning engineer, they look at those numbers. Okay, if it gets over here, I got to think about what are we going to do to bring that down below that threshold?
But I guess just to elaborate more, if your worship, through the chair, that those lines are sort of like when you're exceeding those things, then that's when you're going to have issues about not being able to bring things back on the grid. And that's why those stay consistent throughout those times. It's the voltages are what's changing, right? The amperages that there, but those baselines don't change. Like when the equipment will trip, that doesn't change in the whole thing. That's why those numbers are consistent.
Yeah, it's based on what they call it, like thermal loading. So you really don't want to exceed that, because you could be exceeding the loading of the equipment, and something could potentially fail on the pole, something could potentially fail at the substation or on the feeder.
So that's what flips when it's consistently over that. That's what possibly could flip us into that cold load.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
System that they talk about.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I say this a lot about bad events. Something usually good comes out of bad events, and we've had a few a few very longer power outages than normal in certain areas of town over the last 2.5 or 3 years, and more regularly than we were used to. So I think that that's definitely highlighted the need for this group to get on this sooner rather than later. I think everybody that's ever served on council over the last 20 years probably saw this day coming eventually, but we happen to be the team that's sitting around the table when the days finally came, and we have to do something. We can't keep, doing the minimum or doing what we think. We have to do a full, complete upgrade of the system, and I think that's where we're headed. So again, does anybody have any other questions for Darren? Because if not, we can move on to the operating budget.
I can just add one little side note, Your Worship, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just give a little side. I did work at St. John Energy for 22 years, by the way, and part of that, we did have 4 kV at that time when I was there, and we did all major upgrades. And I'm sure Paul's been talking to the MEUs. Their reliability has gone from, they're one of the top quartile for interruption stats through, they report to Canadian Electricity Association. They rank one of the highest utilities now in reliability. And it's just because of doing all these upgrades, they call it hardening the system, putting a stronger pole and putting modern equipment up. And it hardens the system, and it's something that you can boast and talk about in the future. Say, hey, St. John Energy, or Lunenburg, we have upgraded our system. We have maintained now we're a much more reliable utility. We have very few outages, and that's the plan. That's the goal. That's one of the end targets, even though you got this increase, but to increase the reliability on the feeder.
Thank you, Councillor Fullerton, and then Councillor Strong.
The only thing that sort of comes back to me is when I hear about the large number of municipalities that face the same struggle we do with their electric utilities, and not all of them have their own electric utilities, but those who do, we also know that Nova Scotia Power has challenges to keep pace with the demand for electrification. And this is way beyond our scope as a town council, but I guess my only concern would be that we jump in and get this done, and then Nova Scotia Power can't provide any more power to us. So, I assume that with the relationship you have with Nova Scotia Power, that this is something that, they would sort of stand up and say, "Oh, wait a minute, we have some work to do too."
Yeah, we've been talking to. That's part of the Nova Scotia system operator. That's what they look at. Transmission line capacity, what's available in the province. And as you're aware, or you may not be, some of the MEUs have a collaboration where they're together and they share a renewable resource. I think the old area or municipalities, they share a wind site and a solar site, and they share those energy flows back into the community. And that's part of doing this too, allows that community, who knows, down the road, say 4 years, you may have a developer coming in, hey, maybe I want to build a solar farm, or I want to do this, and that can come on the grid and feed the town. Or have a battery, they call it, that they're talking, if you listen to all the news, talking about batteries and offshore wind and things like that. Those are potential things that Lunenburg will be allowed to integrate into their system at the end of it. And those conversations with Nova Scotia Power have to happen and will continue to happen. And we'll report, over the time. They know what the load is in Lunenburg and what the potential load growth is. And you keep them aware of any large customers that want to connect to the grid. And they're fully aware of that. And they're monitoring their system too, to ensure that the transmission line can feed Lunenburg.
Councillor Strong.
Thanks very much.
I just wanted to comment that because we skipped year 4 and 5, I should note that we skipped a $2 million savings in those 2 years. So I see the costs going down, and hopefully that's going to be a thing that sticks with us. But I also shared an article with my colleagues this weekend about that shows that we're not unique in this, that right now transmission costs are eclipsing the actual cost of the energy. And so I am very hopeful that we can get there. And I think that other solutions will be coming along at the same time. I did see a provision for a battery in here too.
Potential for integration of batteries onto the system if they did come. Yeah.
Because I do feel that that's where we're moving to, and really happy to see that happening.
Thank you.
And just through you, Chair, just like in the MMEUA, Summerside PEI actually is a leader in battery storage and renewables on PEI. So again, there's good best practices that are coming from the Alliance as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so thank you very much, Darren. We're moving on to the operating budget.
I thank everyone for their time, and if anyone ever has any questions, you can go through Lisa or myself, and we'll gladly answer those questions anytime. Feel free to do so. I think it's important that yourselves get a good understanding of what we're trying to accomplish and the language. And I apologize, some of the terms get I get kind of technical, and Lisa's good at calming me down, trying to turn things back around. So I really appreciate that. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the beautiful evening.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to 5.2, the draft electric utility operating budget. Lisa?
Thank you, Your Worship. Jamie, are we going to display the presentation? for the operating budget? I mean, it's only a few slides, but I think we can start while Jamie's getting that up there for us in the agenda package. So the town's electric utility operating budget is before council this evening for consideration for approval. That's not the one we're looking for, Jamie. You have to go down probably 20 pages or so.
Stand there.
Yeah, that is exactly what we're looking for, that one there. There you go. You can go to the next slide, Jamie. So there is a short PowerPoint presentation to review this item with council. So the electric utility is a separate fund within the town's organization structure, and the electric utilities fund is self-balanced, as is the town's water utility. So the total revenue for fiscal 26-27 is budgeted at $8,896,500. And the expenditures are budgeted at $8,872,000, which results in an anticipated modest surplus of $24,500. This slide notes that there was a budgeted increase of 16.3%, or just over $1.2 million. There's a more detailed breakdown later in the presentation of that amount. Jamie, we can move to the next slide. So the chart on this slide has a breakdown of the expenses within the electric utility. The largest expenditure, obviously, is the cost of power purchased for resale, which accounts for 74% of the overall expenditures. We can move to the next slide, which shows a breakdown of the other expenditures, which amount to 26%. So within this group, field crews and maintenance are 6.6%. And then town staff for management, administration, finance, which also includes meter reading services now, is 5.2%. Other items to note are debt financing at 3% and depreciation at 4.8%. Both of those are products of our capital campaign. They are results of the work that we've already done in this past year and the budgeted work that is coming. Both of those are a significant impact to the operating budget, but are a result of our capital campaign. We can then move on to the last slide. This final slide summarizes the budget changes year over year for that 16.3% that we noted earlier. The most significant item on this is the elimination of the deficit from the previous year. So in fiscal 26-27, that was budgeted just over $800,000. And with our new rates, we are now in that modest surplus position, which means that the utility is covering its own costs, which is what rates are designed to do for the utility. So that was my brief, and it is brief, overview. But if there's any questions, happy to answer those.
So basically taking off the deficit elimination, it's really only about a 5% increase.
It's a very modest increase.
Like,
and really, when you're looking at it in the expenditures that we control outside of cost of power, they're next to nothing, really.
if you take the power purchases and the deficit elimination off of that, the increase is nothing.
Yeah.
Really. It's actually around a little over 1%.
Yeah.
It's not even 2%. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Any comments or questions for Lisa? Deputy Mayor?
That deficit elimination is huge, very important. I know going forward with the borrowing that's going to be required, that debt financing portion of our operating will probably increase significantly in the short term. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct. Obviously, we are actively seeking grants. We are not holding up capital work to seek those grants, but we are actively seeking those grants. Any grants we see will certainly help that situation. But yes, that our debt borrowing is going to increase. It is, the utilities borrowing does not work into the overall percentage for the town, but we still manage it in that same careful, considered manner as we would for the town as well. But just wanted to know that, because I know we often speak about it, about debt financing for the wastewater treatment plant and how that impacts the town, but that's because that's within the tax rate or a combination thereof, not a separate balancing fund such as the electric or the water utility.
Thank you for that, because I think it's very important that people understand that. And so it's important to emphasize that this is a separate business operation, and yeah, to your point, hopefully we will be able to get some relief and partnership from other levels of government or elsewhere that recognize the value of investment, and the return that may be more easily realized down the road with with relief to that. But to also to the point, I think I just kind of want to emphasize that we're going into this with our eyes wide open, that this is, we're going to have to do some heavy lifting in the short term to get this done. And that's just the way it is, because it needs to get done. So thanks.
The one positive I'd say is looking at this year's budget, say, for example, compared to last year's budget with the new rates that were approved, we're going to be sitting in a much better position going into all this, getting rid of that deficit elimination of basically $900,000 and having an actual surplus, because the two previous years we've lost money in the utility. And if it's run as a separate business, which it is, you can't continue to lose money because you won't have a business. And I will say the nice thing about Lunenburgers over the years is councils before us, many councils before us, all the way back to whenever, have always kept the debt ratio of our utilities to a minimum when they can. So that is also a great benefit to those of us sitting around the table now. So again, it's the great work from a financial measure or financial standpoint that the staff and previous councils have always taken at every level. Our debt ratio for general operating is very low compared to a lot of municipalities. Our debt ratio for the utility is very low at this point. It will probably go up significantly in the next couple of years, but that's why we're able to do this. If our debt ratio was at 13 or 14%, we wouldn't be able to consider most of this work until we did possibly get some help in other areas. So again, I will say that, everybody likes to give previous councils a hard time for the utility being in the position it's in. But again, the way they financed it over the years at least has given us the opportunity at this time to proceed the way we want to proceed. So, there's not a municipality or an electric utility, I don't think, in Atlantic Canada that, can honestly say they're rolling in the dough and things are going great. I mean, every municipality is in need of infrastructure, whether it's a utility or a wastewater plant or water utility. So again, we like to sit up here, and community likes to crap on all the previous councils, but it's the work they did over the last 25 to 50 years to keep the debt ratio down that allows us to do what we're about to do, I think, here tonight. So again, I think we all have to be prepared for that debt ratio to go up, but that's the reality of getting the work done. So again, I have no other questions or comments except for I want to thank staff, like I thanked SEMA earlier, for all the hard work and time and effort you've spent on this report. And again, the charts, I mean, I think everybody can read like the pie charts and the graphs and understand them much more so than some of the explanations we can read. So thank you very much for putting it in a way that everybody can understand it, the public can understand it, because this is a public document. So thank you very much for your hard work and effort. So is there any other questions or comments for Lisa at this time? Okay, so if there's no other questions, we can move on to item 6, which is public input on the proposed budgets that we just saw. So again, it's an opportunity for members of the public to speak, and all questions and comments will be directed through myself. And clarifying or directing questions may be addressed during the meeting. So basically, there's 2 people in the audience. We've had no one from virtual get a hold of us and no one email us. So if any of you 2 would like to speak, the podium's up front. And okay, Andrew, you're up. Packed house.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I don't think there's one utility in the MMEUA that operates or plans on operating like this 5-year plan is. And what I mean by that is all of those other utilities all have permanent staff of some sort. So, you know, stuck on page 41 of 44, Nova Scotia Power is going to be extended another 2 years. And this 5-year plan, there's nothing in year 3, 4, or 5 of what's going to take place after that. So, you know, I've talked before, I've been around here for 20 years in the industry, and I don't think there's one thing that is wrong with the proposed budget as infrastructure upgrades. Everything that is listed in there needs to happen. You know, my concern is that, you know, I've got a local business. I've got a little skin in the game here of local employees and local work. And, you know, I'm from here. So when I see companies that are from based in Arizona taking taxpayers' dollars away from here in the local economy, like Centuri, who bought out CAUS, doing the bulk of the work, all that stuff is going stateside. And I don't see a real plan in the future listed of hiring a utility manager or hiring someone to transfer out of this 2-year thing, whether it's private contractor or it would be in the town's best interest to operate like the other 9 utilities and go back to how it was 10 or 15 years ago. But other than that, I don't have too much more to say. I had a bunch wrote out here, but I think the decision's already made. Just I would hate to see that $21 million of taxpayers' money goes into a utility with no forethought further on in the road, and all of that taxpayer money basically upgrades the infrastructure, and then it gets handed over to Nova Scotia Power or something. So that's my concerns. I've reached out, tried to have a sit down with Paul, CAO, and Jamie, and to no avail. Here I am tonight. So this is probably, you guys, by the sounds of it, the town has their mind made up, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And again, you know, being someone that was on council many moons ago, I'd love to be able to close my eyes and snap my fingers and go back to the way it was when I was on council previously, because having your own line crew and your own crew here on site was definitely a huge asset to the community. Unfortunately, with the capital that we're doing now, we're not at a point to go back to that at this time, but I don't think it's something that wouldn't consider in the future. I think our main priority now is to get the line and the grid back up in position. And at some point, I certainly can see possibly the community looking at going back to the way it was, because I can tell you, I certainly loved the way it was 15 years ago. So I hear what you're saying. And the 2-year contract with NSPI that we're just extended is basically we're in the bowels of getting this done right now. So we want to get this going, and NSPI is set at the table and are willing to get it going and get it where it needs to go. But that's not saying in 2029 or 30 that we don't look at different options, because you are correct. We probably are the only utility in the MMEUA that doesn't have our own work crew. So again, I guess NSPI would be considered our work crew at this point, but Paul?
Through you, Chair. So what was recently announced and provided to council from the MMEUA with the COA grant through the project that we received as partnership to look at a 10-year roadmap that we'll be working with St. John Energy on to see what are our options, where do we want to go, and what does the council want as direction. We're looking at cybersecurity within that scope as well. We just did a baseline of understanding where our baselines are and for the electrical utility through this process. We're going to be working with Deloitte Canada on future electrification options and opportunities. And as well within that is a tie-in with supports for grant writing and communication processes as part of the MMEUA. So in the grand scheme right now, we're trying to get through this process, but we are already planning to see what are our next steps, how are we going to build out, and what is the town's electrical utility going to look like for servicing and support in the future. Right now, it's getting us through the next 5 years, which is most critical. And right now, that is with our current service provider with NSP. But I would encourage Mr. Himmelman and his business to approach Nova Scotia Power and to make sure that you're aligned with them and to look at the opportunities that are available and can be made available through the service agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Robin?
Your worship, I just have one question with the substation on Green Street, and it's we're a tourist town, and everybody kind of drives through that way to come to Lunenburg, and I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind, like where they're proposing the substation is actually where we advertise, welcome to Lunenburg and kind of picturesque nature. It's already not that picturesque, so I just wanted to make sure that we keep that in consideration and not have, a very nice middle Russia look when we kind of drive into town.
Your worship. We've been mindful of that as well in the discussions about the location and, comparing it to the substation on Star Street. We've been considering like fencing that would, blend it into the community and that sort of thing. So we are keeping that as a consideration for design.
Thank you so much. And I know that this is needed and I know how much work went into this. And I did kind of want to see you all spend $21 million tonight. So good luck.
Thank you very much. So we have no other comments from the gallery. So we'll move on to 7.1. There is a recommendation in front of us based on the presentation we just saw tonight. Is someone prepared to move recommendation number 1? Councillor Strong.
I'd make a motion that council approve the 2026-27 electric utility capital budget as presented, totaling $4,387,000.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fullerton, any further discussion or questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. Recommendation number 2, that council approve the 5-year capital plan for the Lunenburg Electric Utility as included in the 2026-27 capital budget. Who would Councillor Fullerton, would you like to make that?
Yes. Do you want me to read it again? Okay. Taking the recommendation that council should approve the 5-year capital plan for the Lunenburg Electric Utility as included in the 2026-27 capital budget.
It's moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greek. Any further discussion or question on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, motion carried unanimous. 7.2. There is one recommendation there based on the operating budget that was just presented by our finance department. Someone prepared to move that council approve the 26-27 electric utility operating budget as presented, totaling $8,896,500. Is someone prepared to move that? Moved by Councillor Babineau, seconded by Councillor Strong. Any further discussion or question on the motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. And 7.3, there's a recommendation there that council approve the submission of an application to the Nova Scotia Energy Board, NSEB, for their approval of a per kilowatt increase to offset power purchase cost increases associated with the May 1st, 2026 and January 1st, 2027 NSPI municipal rate increases. So this is just a flow through of what our increase is getting, right, Lisa?
That is correct, your worship. Yes.
Yeah, so we're not increasing our rates, we're just increasing what NSPI's increase was.
It flows through that our rates will change, your worship.
Okay, our rates change, but it's not an increase we're asking for, it's an
No,
increase that we have to flow through.
that is correct.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because if we don't do this, we'd actually lose money.
Yes,
Right.
that was what my summary was that if we don't do it, that surplus that we just spoke about would turn into a deficit. Yes, your worship.
100%. So basically, this is basically to go along with the rates that NSPI were approved recently. So is someone prepared to move that recommendation? Who made that? Moved by Councillor Greek, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion or question on that motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, motion carried unanimous. Again, nothing else on the agenda, so motion for adjournment is in order. Moved by Councillor Fullerton, seconded by Councillor Babineau. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the evening. And thank you to those that came and spoke.